morning, friends. I hope everybody is well on this Thursday morning. It's August 20th, 2020. So we got 20, and we got Nate in there as well. I'm glad to see everybody today. I'm just my screen is a little weird. This is Alignment with Rebecca. My name's Dr. Rebecca Lee McCarthy. For those of you who don't know me, my degree is in comparative studies and theater. There you go. Kind of a combination of things. But when I teach communication studies, philosophy, ethics, humanities, and I also got some sociology in there. So I am a mixed bag in a world of specialists. Today, I want to continue our conversation a little bit on this idea of noise in communication because we got a lot of noise going on here. I swear, everywhere I look, there's tons of noise, and the internet has made it worse. I mean, I love the internet. I have been a big fan of it. I was one of those early adopters. My dad was a computer programmer, and so in the late 1980s, I actually had access to computers and the internet, and I fell in love with it. And I thought for certain it was going to democratize the world and blah, 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 and da, 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 and educate us all and make it easier for people to have access to information. And of course, the opposite has happened. In some ways, the wild, wild west of the internet has turned into a big mesh of advertisement. What are you going to do? That's what you get when you live in a society that values things over processes, which is why we are here, because I'm all about the processes. And I'm hoping to offer just a few suggestions and tools. I know that I don't have a large audience right now, but if you have any questions from any of the content, please take a few minutes and let me know. I'm here, I'm available, and I'm certainly very happy to help folks out. So we were talking yesterday, or actually this entire week, we started with the definition of what communication is anyways, because most of us have a vague understanding of what communication is, but we don't really have a deep understanding of it. Like if we were asked to give a massive definition, we'd probably be like, I don't know. And I was for many years, I mean, the amazing thing about teaching is it forces you to actually understand the shit you're teaching, because ultimately, if you don't, you can cause harm. And most of us don't wish to do that. So part of the process of discussing about what communication is are the things that interfere with our ability to communicate. And yesterday we talked about noise. And again, a quick recap. There are four main types of noises. There is physical noise in our environment, also things like technical noise, which breaks on us. When I was giving the definition of communication, I lost my stream in the middle, lost my internet connection, and that was noise. We have semantic noise, that's confusion about language, everything from somebody speaking a different language than you, using jargon, shortcuts, abbreviation, emojis, you name it. All of that stuff is part of it. Then we also talked a little bit about physiological noise. That we covered yesterday. So that's noise that comes from our body. When we're sick, we aren't giving ourselves enough. There you go. There's a little bit of physical noise there, my cat. When you don't give yourself enough rest or nutrition. Come on, Harpo. Oh, this is what we call the Harpocam. Harpocam. Boom, boom. It's so mean of me. But if you're going to give me physical noise, then you have to be on camera. Then the other thing that we want to talk about is psychological noise. Now, I left this for today because we could sit around and talk about psychological noise for days on end. And we have created, unfortunately, an environment that really does create a lot of psychological noise, and it's getting better. I mean, you can't go on the news without talking about how this person has wronged that person, this person is shaming this person on the internet, and so on and so forth. We are filled with psychological noise as well as physical noise of kitty cats who think that they should be fed every 5 minutes. So let's talk about psychological noise because this is a topic I really feel is really vital for us all right now, especially our political climate, our social climate, how we treat ourselves, our personal well-beings, and the fact that psychological noise is hard to detect. So if we talk about physical noise when we communicate, and again, I'm talking about communication, but this goes into all aspects of your life. It doesn't stop at the moment of communication, but we also talked about how communication never stops. It's a constant negotiation for meaning. But the problem with psychological noise is we don't see it. That's the rub right there. There's the rub. We don't see psychological impacts that we have in our life. And this is because they are ingrained in our being. We are raised with certain ideas and concepts, certain spiritual beliefs, certain intellectual beliefs, certain emotional beliefs, and these things become so much part of our everyday lives that we have a hard time seeing it. Some people call this embeddedness, i.e., it's embedded in our nature, and because it's so much a part of our nature in general, that we have a really hard time detecting that it even exists. So psychological noise are all the biases, all the opinions, all the thoughts that we have that we believe to be absolutely true, that when other people don't agree with us, then that noise comes into play and we stop listening. And we're seeing this a lot online, in everyday life, on all aspects of life, especially in politics. We see this so much in politics, in social or spiritual, religious disagreements. It's this inability to see past our own belief systems, to take a moment to empathize, sympathize, or have compassion for somebody else's belief systems. So one of the things I confront a lot when I am teaching is this statement: I don't have any biases. And I'm always a little laughing inside. And it's not the other person's fault. It's how we have, and I laugh because how we now understand bias. So we're always putting bias, for the most part, in a negative cup. So bias is bad because it tends to coincide with discrimination. It tends to coincide with not understanding. But if you have a preference of any kind in your life, like let's say you prefer Mexican food to Chinese food, you prefer vanilla ice cream to chocolate ice cream, you are attracted to this kind of individual more than that kind of individual, these are all biases. Every single one. So bias is neutral. It doesn't need to be positive and it doesn't need to be negative. It just is, and it's part and partial to who we are as human beings. So it's as simple as that. Now, we can take biases to the negative realm, in which we do victim blaming, in which we have discrimination against people who look or think or act differently than us. Or we can have it to the positive side of, I am going to have minestrone soup tonight and I am so excited. That's a bias as well. Or I'm going to go out to my favorite restaurant, or I'm going to listen to my favorite music. So they can go the whole entire realm, the whole gamut, if you will, of how we think of things. But the biases that get us in trouble are the negative biases. And we all have them, and we can't escape them. We are born with them, we are raised with them, we are socialized by them, and everything that we take in our world. The music we listen to, the books we read, the values and thoughts that come from our parents and family, or from our spiritual institutions, from our politics, from our social beliefs, and so on and so forth. And again, the problem is we don't see these things because, first of all, we've accepted them as being right in our brain to some degree. And then on another level, they become part of our everyday habits. So there's something called the empathy gap, and many people may have heard of it. And the empathy gap basically means that we have cold empathy and we have hot empathy. When we have cold empathy, we usually believe we are going to perform in a very upright and awesome way if we are faced with a difficult situation. The hot empathy means we are in a hot situation. That means there's stress, some shit is coming down, and we are pushed up against the wall. And then our true actions, which are normally reactions, they emerge. So we've seen a lot of, this is, I think, a really good example. We've seen a lot of videos come out of white people treating black people like crap because they say, oh, I have no prejudice. But under a hot situation, they behave in a way that is opposite of what they say they would do. And that's because prejudice becomes embedded. We see it on the TV sets. We see it in books. If there's a bad character, normally it's somebody who is black. If we associate good versus bad with colors, we say good is white and bad is black. So these things are so much part of who we are that, yes, it exists. You have prejudice. Whether you like it or not, it exists. So what happens when we are in a hot situation and the psychological noise bubbles up, our prejudices, our biases, our beliefs, and they don't match up with the situation? Like we talked about since, I think early on, the deal is that we are reacting. And whenever we come to a space of communication or interaction, whether you're talking about dealing with a difficult situation or whatever it is, reacting, simply just going, wait a minute, and then acting without thinking, that's going to get you in trouble. And it's also the reason why we don't start to see our biases and our prejudices, because we're not taking a few minutes to calm down, take that breath, and really examine our actions before we decide to act. And that's vital. It really, really is. So when you see somebody who is asking for ID from black people who are going into a community pool, but you don't do that to the white people, this is your psychological noise bubbling up in a hot situation, demonstrating to you that, hey, you do have some biases that you might need to consider. Now, this stuff also goes into things like victim blaming. So a victim blaming is when we say that the reason something happened to somebody, and it's usually something bad, is a result of that person rather than a result of the person who initiated the action. Women see this a lot. There's often this discussion of, well, look what she was wearing. She deserved to be raped. In junior high, I'll share a little story with you. In junior high, I was attacked by my cross-country team. I was a very fast runner, and at that moment in time, I had been given an opportunity to train for the Olympics, something I didn't take up on. But there was a lot of jealousy, and it was junior high, and that shit happens, right? So after one of our track meets, I was attacked by 3 boys. And I was sexually molested. And if my mom hadn't shown up when she did, I probably would have been raped. But the way the school handled it, some teachers handled it amazingly. But when I was brought in without my parents present to give a report to police about the incident, the first questions that came out of the police's mouth were, why weren't you wearing a bra? And they asked me if I was wearing underwear. Well, I was in junior high. I had nothing to be wearing a bra for. And it didn't matter if I was wearing underwear or not. But that's an example of victim blaming. And we do it all the time. We do this all the time. And that is a form of the fundamental attribution error, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later. But all of this comes from psychological noise in communication. It comes from the type of noise that invades our brains, and it is about our biases and our prejudices and all the pain that we create as a result of not questioning those realities inside ourselves. So the challenge, and this is why I have meditation after these discussions, the challenge is to learn how we can step back from our beliefs, from our assumptions, from our embedded prejudices and biases, and really see why we are making the decisions we are making, why are we saying the things that we are saying, and at what level does empathy, compassion, or sympathy come into the game. And those topics will be talked about in later broadcasts. So for the moment, I think I'd just like us to sit for a few minutes in our meditation. And I really am going to challenge you to think about your biases. But I don't want you just to go to the negative. I want you to also think about those biases that are positive in your life. We focus too much on the negative in our culture. We focus so much on the negative that we beat ourselves up daily. We beat other people up daily, verbally or physically or whatever it may be. And that's because we don't look at the things that actually work. So in our meditation, I want you to consider two main things, and I'll walk you through it. First, what are the biases that really work well for you? How do they help your life? What ways do they help sustain your life and make it a better space for you? And then I want you to consider the biases that lead into things like prejudice, into things like unfair judgment. And where do they exist in you? Because they do. We all have it. If you're human, you got it. So what our job is to uncover these things in our lives so that we better understand them, and then we have a conscious choice to change them or not. So get comfortable. Take a seat. You can lay on the floor. You can sit on a chair. You can sit on the floor. I want you to basically find a position that you can be really restful, very comfortable, but not fall asleep. If you're listening to me in the car, turn me off. You don't want to get too relaxed if you're using heavy equipment, anything like that. You really just need to be in a space where you can focus on meditation so you aren't distracted by other noise in your environment. Kevin MacLeod is with us again today in his ELF meditation. Mahalo, Kevin. If you ever see this, we appreciate you. Start by taking a really deep breath. I want you to feel that breath enter all the way through your body, all the way to the very base of your spine. And exhale. As you breathe, focus a little bit about breathing through your nose for a count of 5, holding that breath for a count of 1 or 2, whatever is most comfortable for you, and then exhaling for a count of 6 or 7. Holding for another count of 1 or 2, and then begin the breathing process again. Breathing in through your nose, holding, and then exhaling through your mouth or nose, and then starting again. Focus only on your breath. Our minds are very busy things. There's so many monologues and stories and questions. But just for these few minutes, simply observe those workings of your brain. Notice the thought. And then you can put it on a cloud and just wisp it away. It'll be there for you when you're done. But right now, at this moment, this is a moment for you. Breathe. Attention to your breath. Now, I want you to imagine a beautiful bright light coming from the very top of your head, your crown, and bringing it with it information about how you function. I want you to start visualizing your biases, but the positive ones. The ones that help you decide what to eat. The ones that help you decide when you need a hug. The biases that propel you to change your life, do a good job, help others. Imagine a specific moment in which you felt compassion. Or you helped somebody get into a car or find their way home. Remember your bias towards laughter. What are the jokes that bring you great joy? The comedians, or the music that you have a bias for that lifts you up and carries you through the day. Now consider those things that you still need to work on. Those hidden biases that might lead you down a path you don't want to go down. Those assumptions and thoughts, labels, words that you might find bubbles up and causes harm to others. There's a wonderful technique. Imagine a situation you have actually been in that you didn't handle very well. We all do it. And often it hurts us as much as it hurts the other person. Briefly, just replay that moment and then take the positive biases that you also have and imagine that moment again but with a different outcome. Keep breathing. See the other person's face and dissolve it from one of pain to one of happiness or gratitude. Because you chose words, actions, intentions to help heal the other person and yourself. See the whole scene changing. Now let go of all those visualizations. Release them and focus back upon your breath. Just observe yourself in this moment. No judgments. No anger. Feel love for yourself. See the good that bubbles up in yourself. Take one final deep breath, hold it in, and then exhale with a great sigh. Now wiggle your nose, your fingers and your toes. Coming back to the present moment. Keep your eyes closed for one more moment and just be aware of yourself as the observer. How do you feel? And as you prepare to open your eyes gently and return to the everyday world of life, give yourself this intention today. I will uncover my biases and prejudices so I can better decide how I want to act, how I want to think in any present moment. If you join me today, I thank you. I am grateful for you, and I hope that you have a wonderful Thursday. Mahalo for your time, and aloha.